Good afternoon. Okay, so today's our topic is preventing counterplay. Okay, yeah. So today we will learn about how to prevent our opponent's counterplay. Uh, we will look into a game and try to understand how can you prevent your opponent's counterplay. Let me open the analysis board. Yeah. Let me set up the position first. Uh, Meanwhile, you can write in the chat what do you mean by counterplay. I just want to get like what do you understand by this word counterplay? What do you mean by it? Yeah, so I have set up the position in front of our screen, and this is black to play. Just before that, can you write down in the chat what do you mean by counterplay? To attack, okay, in this to attack in reverse, opponent again attack giving an advantage to us. To attack in reverse of the opponent attack, giving an advantage to us. Mm, not exactly. Uh, you are like preventing a counter play. That means you are not attacking. There is no such attacking scenario in this topic. This is not about attack, but to prevent an attack from your opponent's side. So basically, this is a defensive technique, not an attacking uh, technique we are studying today. It is completely a defensive thing. You are preventing opponent's counterplay. That means many things come uh, arises from this topic counterplay. So what do you mean? Like there are very positional topics like paralyzing an opponent's piece. That means restricting the movement of your opponent's pieces. Uh, Prophylaxis, one of the most important thing. Prophylaxis. So these all type of things together make preventing counterplay. So basically, what you are doing. is you are not allowing your opponent's pieces to play or enter in your camp, so that it can like execute an attack or some type of plan your opponent has, and you are identifying it, you are preventing that plan. So these all things comprises of the counter play. um, so let's begin with this position first, and let's try to understand what uh, is there in this position. It is black to play, and think for a while, what should black play in this position. If he has identified what type of counterplay white has, then obviously he will come up with a move that will definitely prevent white's counterplay. So for that you have to identify what counterplays white has in this position. So think from white's point of view, and then try to come up with a move with black. Okay, so let me explain. So in this position, black has an opposite attack on the king side, and white is attacking the towards the queen side, where black has done a long castling. So black is completely attacking the king side. The g file is open. Rook g1. Rook rook g8. Okay, you are playing rook g8. So idea is to play s3 maybe. So before that, like, tell me what type of counterplay white has before like you're proceeding with black move. Just tell me what type of plans or what type of moves does white has in this position, because white is completely like attacking towards the queen side where black has castled, and white's counterplay is on the king side, towards the king side where white has castled. So if it were white's move, then what would have white played in this position? So if you look at the position, b4, like there's a pawn on b4 and black's pawn is on c5. So one possibility is capturing the c pawn, b cross c5, so that the b file gets opened for the rook. But again, if you play b cross c4, then knight will jump to c5. So it will occupy a good outpost on c5. So that would create problem for the white bishop. The white bishop on d3 will be under attack, and if that bishop is exchanged, suppose knight cross d3, d3 queen cross d3, so white's attacking chances will be almost over. So white will definitely try to prevent that bishop on d3. So b cross c5 doesn't work for white. So let's look into some other plans from white side. See his if you see his attacking pieces, his white bishop is attacking. He's occupying the f1 and a6 diagonal. So if white is successful in clearing this a file by placing a5, and after exchange of this pawn, uh, the a file gets open and this diagonal f1 a6 diagonal is open. So white can create a good attack on the king side. So from black side you have to identify this, that what type of plans white can prepare. So now you have identified that this bishop is very actively placed on d3, where it is controlling this diagonal and looking towards the uh, queen side, where the king has castled, and this a file, there is a possibility that this a file gets opened by playing a file and the rook is on a1. So you have identified that in 2 or 3 moves later white will create an attack on the queen side. So now you have to think that how will you prevent this counterplay, how will you prevent this counterplay. If you have thought like this, in this way you can definitely come up with a accurate move from black side. So now tell me, what should black play in this position? Rook g8 is good, you are creating attack on the king side, but that like your rook alone cannot do the attack on the king side, because you have other pieces which should come which should join this attack, but it's not possible now, because this knight is on d7, bishop is on b7, this is controlling this diagonal. So once you get d4, this bishop will become active and it will join the attack. So you have to bring other pieces also into the attack. Next move s3 will not work because of pawn g3 and king h2. This king looks completely safe on h2. Uh, so I don't think rook g8 will work immediately. Yeah, but later on, if all the black pieces, suppose this knight jumps to, let's say f5, uh, let's say f5, then you can play rook g8 or double your rooks on g5. That would work, but not now. You have to wait for some time before playing rook g8. So now you have to play a defensive, not exactly a defensive, but I would say that you have to stop your opponent's counterplay. You have to stop your opponent's attack. Yeah. So you have to stop your opponent's attack. So how will you do that? You have identified that this bishop on d3 is directly attacking the king side, and this rook on a1 will become active in like 2 or 3 moves later after playing a5. You have to exchange the means b cross a, or white will capture a cross b. Then this a file will get open. He can play bishop a6, he can bring his queen to a4 once the pawn is moved. So like this type of threats are there from white side. So now you have to stop such threats. How will you stop it? Always don't go for attack. If you are getting if you are able to assess the position accurately, you can identify your opponent's plan as well, and you have to stop that. A5 weakens your king side. You are moving all your pawns from the king side. Now if b cross a, this b file gets opened, rook b1, again rook b, bishop b5, queen b3, all type of possibilities are there. So again you are exposing your king, your king will be safe if it can go to b8 or a8, it will be safe. But before that you have to block your king side, because the most risky part of the black's position is his white's queen side. Is there is a space advantage on the white's queen side, so white can exploit the space advantage, and he can immediately attack the castle side of queen side, castle queen side. So how to stop that? A5 doesn't work. Okay. So correct move in this position is to play c4. c4. You are gaining a tempo. You are attacking a piece as well as you are blocking this diagonal. So first step is to block the diagonal of f1 and a6. So what you have done, you have restricted your a6, no, not a6. So the ac4 is the correct move. This pawn is creating a blockade on the queen side. So only move, I mean, the bishop will not go to c2. It can go to c2, but I don't think like it will be active on c2 square. It will go to e2, bishop e2. So after you have blocked this bishop's diagonal, a6 and f1 diagonal, so what you have done, you have restricted one of your opponent's attacking pieces. So now this rook is there. Yeah, obviously this he can play a5, but this rook alone cannot do. You have your bishop who is defending this queen side. So after c4, bishop e2, now you can proceed with your attack. Now black can proceed with the attack. So now still there is a threat of a5. Now he can play a6. After bishop e2, he can play a6. Now if white plays a5, there is b5. So black has completely closed the queen side. So there is none of the white's pieces can penetrate this. This bishop is like completely blocked. This knight can jump, but it cannot do much from d4. It can control c6, but there is no such threats from white side. So basically, you are preventing counterplay means what? You are preventing any type of possible threats from your opponent's side. So let's go back to the initial position. So uh, so before proceeding with your attack, you should always look into your position. You should carefully consider what type of plans your opponent has, and after preventing them, then only go for an attack. Don't just simply go for an attack. Make your king safe, make your position safe, then only launch attack against your opponent. So if you would have directly played rook h g8, or let's say rook d g8, white would simply play a5. Now you cannot block the position. Like even if you play c4 here, he will play a into b6. Queen is under attack. You cannot take this bishop. You have to take with the a pawn. Otherwise, a pawn is also hanging. A cross b6. Then he can move his bishop to c2, where he can go a4, or maybe he can directly go rook a7, or double up his rook on a file and create this type of attacks maybe. So this is very dangerous for white. So you have to identify this sequence of moves which which there is a possibility of this type of move. You have to identify. I am not telling you to calculate precisely everything, but yeah, a general overview of the pieces like this type of plans white can have. So it's better to avoid it and then go for an attack. So our first step will be to prevent opponent's counterplay. That means you are restricting opponent's pieces. I've restricted this bishop diagonal from a6 to f1. It can go to c2 and e2. Let's say it goes to e2. Then you can play a6. Again a6, idea of a6 is to stop a5. If white now plays a5, you can block the position. Now this rook is inactive. This rook cannot do anything from a1. It has to look for some other square. I mean, like it is like impossible for white to launch an attack on the queen side. So now white's pieces will be like completely occupied in defending the king side, where there is open g file, and the rooks can be doubled on this g file and attack the g2 pawn. So now let's continue with this position. So after a6, here black played. Let's see what white played here. Yeah, after a6, bishop e2, a6, white played king h1. So white removed the king from the semi-open G file and put it on H1. Black played rook DG8. Yeah. So rook DG8, the last move black played. Here white played rook G4. No, it's white 4. Rook G1. He played rook G1, defending the G2 pawn. Black proceeded with rook G4. So black's idea is very simple now. He wants to double up his rook on G file. Queen D2, connecting the rooks. Rook HG8 and pawn to A5. So now it's time to block the queen side. So there are no possibilities of attack on the black castle king. So black king is now completely safe. Now he can proceed with the attack and bring all his pieces into the attack. So after b5, white has no play at all, and he eventually fell prey to black's attack. Now it's time for black to start the attack. Okay. So yeah, that's the main like position regarding how to prevent your opponent counterplay. We will look into some other positions. Let's look into another position. So again, this is white to move, and now you have to identify what type of counterplay does black has one or two moves later, and how can you prevent that. Yeah. So this position is white to play. Just think that you are playing with white and consider your opponent plans. What type of plan your opponent has currently? His bishop is well placed on c5. Bishop e6 is also well placed. Knight c6, knight d7. Uh, White is lagging behind in development because his bishop on c1 is badly placed. Rooks are not connected, and his pieces are not that much into the attacking mode, whereas black's pieces are very well placed and like attacking in attacking mode. So how will you prevent it, and what type of like move you will play in this position? Just think for 1 or 2 minutes, and you can write down your moves in the chat. on b4 and bishop a3. A3 before you are giving up a pawn. You cannot take this because the rook is hanging. See this, you this is not immediately, you cannot develop your piece. You cannot play b3 b4 because your rook is hanging, na? So if you play bishop d2, like uh, it is not like from bishop d2 also it is not well placed. It is blocked by this pawn on c3, knight on e3. So let me wait for some time. After this knight moves, maybe I can place my bishop on e3 and exchange this bishop on c5. See, there is one possibility which I can see is this open d file. Okay. Uh, One plan I can see is a3. Black can play a3. If black plays a3, if I capture it, then my c pawn gets isolated. This is an isolated c pawn, which is a weakness, and obviously black will get more. Sorry, no, black will get more counterplay after b cross a3. His knight can jump to c4. His knight can jump to c4 uh, after exchanging this. After exchange this knight on c3, his knight can jump on c4, and this is a good outpost for this knight. And this can directly attack a3, c2. Okay. So I have identified black's plan in this position. So, so to see, to prevent counterplay, you have to first identify what type of counterplay your opponent has. So in this position, there is only one counterplay, that is a3. Okay, there is one counterplay a3. By playing a3, uh, if you take, then it's favorable for black. If you don't take, let's say if you move like b4, you have not done anything by playing b4. This bishop will go back to b6, and it is well guarded by this pawn on c7, and your bishop still cannot be developed on b2 square. Okay, there is a knight on e3. So this position looks very cramped for white. So now you have to make some plan. Once you have identified your opponent's counterplay, let's say we have identified this is the counterplay. A3 is the immediate counterplay black has. So I want to like stop that counterplay. So that is the main topic of our today's class, to prevent our opponent's counterplay. You cannot play a3 also. A3 doesn't look good because of bishop b3, and your rook cannot go occupy this open d file. So you have to look into some other plan. So here white played rook d1, rook d1, pinning this knight on d7. Knight c2 also works. Knight c2 is good. Knight c2, bishop e3 idea. But if you play knight c2, still he can play this. He can play a3. If you take or take with this pawn, even if you take with this knight, b cross a3, b cross a3, knight a5. Idea is again to take this outpost on c4. So this position looks good for black because of this isolated pawns, and there are no isolated pawns on the black side. So this will give favor in the end game from black side. So see, this position is completely like, if if we analyze this position, this is favorable for black. Why? Because white's position is very cramped. None of his pieces are like having any counter play, or there is no such counter play from the white side. So white's just continued with the logical move, that is rook d1, occupying the open file, and here black played knight a5. Black's idea is very simple in this position. He want to play a3 and deflect this pawn on b2 so that he can simply sit on this c4 square after exchanging this knight on e3. So after knight a5, here white played knight f5. Knight f5. So in here the more accurate move was knight h4. The idea was to, if you capture with this bishop, you can capture with this knight. So again we are getting one outpost, but this again, when he plays g6, I don't think g6 is good because of this knight h6. So knight f5 is a good outpost for this knight if he would have played a knight h4, but this direct move knight f5 is a mistake. So white here played knight f5, rook f7. Black played rook f7, rook f7. So idea of rook f7 is to guard both the g7 pawn and the knight on d7, which is attacked by this rook, and he can move his queen and bishop. This knight can later go to f8 and g6 maneuvering. Here white played bishop h3. Bishop h3. It was better to first play h4. So in this position, it was better to play h4 and create some counter play on the king side. But white played here bishop h3. After bishop h3, black played queen e8. He removed the pin. Yeah, queen e8. So he removed his queen from this pin, as well as guarding this e6 bishop and breaking the pin on the d5. The queen will later switch on to f7 square, where it will bring great pressure on the a2 g8 diagonal. Okay. So black's idea is to like place his queen on f7 after like the rook moves, and he can put a pressure on this a2 pawn. Here white, it's white to play. He played knight h3 to knight f3 to h4. Knight f8. Idea is to maneuver his knight to g6. Bishop f1. White is trying to exchange this queen by playing queen b5, queen b5, bishop b5, king h8. He like black removed the king from this open diagonal, and there is a chances of like queen g4 and knight h6. So this type of threats were there. So again, see, you are like identifying any type of counter play. Like in this position, there is a possibility that white can place his queen on g4 and give a check on knight h6 because this pawn is pinned and this rook is forked. So to prevent it, a black played king h8. So again, this type of moves are just simply like you are preventing counterplay, opponent's counterplay. Queen f3, rook d7. So just see how this rook has maneuvered. This rook was initially was on f7. It went to sorry f8. It went to f7. Then rook d7. Trading of this rook. So this rook is on open d file, and if this rook gets traded, the queen will go to d7. Then this rook can also join this and control this open d file. Rook d7, queen d7, knight e3. So now this knight is looking for this d5 square. So it's better to like trade it, but here black played rook d8. Now this knight on h file h4 jumps to f5. Knight h f5, pawn c6. Black is preventing knight d5. Pawn h4, looking for some counterplay on the king side by playing h5 h6. Queen to f7. My idea is to grab this a2 pawn. Knight g4. So now see knight g4. There white is bringing all his pieces into attack. So to stop it, directly played pawn 5. Okay, in this game, black has played knight d7. Okay, knight d7 is also like it is an engine move. Knight d7 guarding the f6 pawn. Bishop h3, bishop f8. Okay, so black is like he's preventing all such counter plays. Maybe there is some counterplay on h6 square. All the pieces are looking this knight on f5, g4, bishop on c1 is looking towards the h6 square. So black is trying to bring control as much as he can, like bishop on f8 and pawn on g7 is controlling his h6 square. So now when this f6 pawn and this g7 pawn are well defended by this bishop and knight. So now black's like there is no such counter play from white side. White, there is no sacrifice. I cannot see any sacrifice. Even if you play knight h6, g h6, knight h6, b h6, bishop h6, nothing will happen. And this f6 is also guarded by this queen and this knight. Bishop e3, bishop a2. So there is no way he can guard this pawn on a2. Like if he plays a3, so there is a fork, knight a3, knight b3, rook b1, and pawn h5. So this is winning for black. So after bishop e3, bishop a2, pawn h5, bishop b3. So now there is black has completely controlled this d1 square. Is looking for like some moves like rook d1 after removing this knight. He can go rook d1, or maybe double up his rook and queen on this d file and play along this d file. Pawn h6. So now g6, knight g7, pawn to b5. Pawn to b5. So after like black has secured his king side, everything is well secured. This knight is doing nothing on this g7 because this can be easily exchanged by this bishop, and black's king look completely safe here. Now he is proceeding with the pawn majority on the queen side, 3 versus 2. So black's simple plan in this position is to create a fast pawn by exchanging the pawns, that is 3 versus 2 pawn. So black will be left with a passed pawn and he can easily win this position. So that's why he played b5. King g2, knight to b7. His idea is to bring this knight on c5. Rook e1, knight d6. Okay, he's looking for this outpost on c4. King h2, knight e8. Again trading this knight on g7. Now black threatens to win another pawn and retain his useful dark square bishop by capturing on g7. So he is threatening to capture on g7 after hg, bishop g. So black is a pawn up. Knight e8, rook e8, and rook e2. And this is a blunder because of bishop d1. And black won this game. So if you look carefully, the sequence of move from black side. So after rook d1, how black has managed this position? He has identified that white is trying to create some counterplay on the king side because there is no counterplay on the queen side, and after black realized it, black has guarded his king. He moved his king to h8. Let's look into the moves again. Here white played bishop h3. He played queen e8. The first step he removed his queen from this pin. Next he he brought his knight to f8, that is removed his piece from the attack, and as well as like guarding the h7 pawn and the king side. Bishop f1, he moved his king from this open diagonal. Queen f3, Rook d7, exchanging the only active white's rook on d5. Knight to e3. His idea is to bring this knight on f5 square. Rook d8, gaining control on this open d file. Knight f5. Pawn to c6, prevented d5. Pawn h4. Queen f7, threatening a2. Knight g4. Here, after knight g4, black played knight d7. Knight d7. Bishop s3. Bishop f8. Bishop e3. Bishop a2. h5. Bishop e3. h6. g6. Knight g7. On b5. King g2. Knight b7. Rook e1. Knight d6. King h2. And then knight e8. So this is the the position for preventing counterplay. We will look one last position. So again, this is white to play. Just think for a while. Uh, what type of counterplay black has in this position, and how can you proceed with it? See, counterplay always doesn't mean that your opponent will have some attacking chances. Uh, he will try to exchange some of your active pieces. He will try to exchange some the very active or attacking pieces. So if like in this position, if black, if you are black, let's say you are black, you can see that this knight is very well placed on b6. So the first point that you would think in your mind that if I can exchange this knight, so few of my problems will be solved from like in this black's position. So his weakness will be solved if he is able to exchange this knight on b6. So one thing he can play is knight d7. And this is obviously a bad bishop because this is not developed. And if you're exchanging a good piece with a bad piece, then it is obviously favorable for your opponent. So black black want him to exchange this bishop on c8 with his knight on b6. So one first thing he has in mind that he can play knight d7 and try to exchange this knight on b6. So how can you prevent it? How can you prevent it? And if you, let's say, if you exchange this knight, so the position looks pretty much equal now. Though white has this pawn on d5, which is a passer, but black has a double bishop advantage, and he can create a blockade like this. So now, like you have understood what type of plan black has. Now you can think and write down your move. See, I don't want to remove this knight from b6 because this knight will help this pawn to move forward, and this knight is very well placed on this b6 square. So I don't want to move this knight from b6, and black will try to exchange this knight. So how will I like proceed with this plan? How will I proceed with this plan? I have one knight on f1. Remember this. Counterplay always doesn't mean that you have to look for attacking. Can be anything. It can be an attack. It can be exchanging of good pieces. Okay. Occupying open files. All type of positional plays. So counterplay is just like you have to achieve that. You have to exchange opponent's good pieces and get rid of your uh, like bad pieces. So you have to think opposite from the opponent's point of view. That means you have to exchange opponent's good pieces and keep your good pieces on the board. So yeah, knight e3 is correct. Knight e3. So idea is if you place knight d7, I have knight c4, and if you exchange, and again I can place my knight, another knight on b6. So this is the main idea white has. Yeah. So the first move in this position is knight to e3. White played knight to e3, black played knight d7, knight e c4, knight b6, knight b6. Bishop f8, rook e c1. So black is targeting this weak pawn on c5, which is defended by this bishop. And if you notice, this white bishop has no squares left. It cannot move from this c8 square. So this is a bad bishop, and never exchange your good pieces with your opponent's bad pieces. So I will try to bring more attack on this c5 pawn, but I don't have my black bishop. So what I can try is I can double up my rook on c file, bring this knight on a4 square, and I can easily win this pawn on c5. Let's see how the game has proceeded. After rook is c1, king f7, bishop d1. Okay, he is maneuvering his bishop from d1 to a4 diagonal. This open diagonal, and attack this rook on e8. So he's looking for some attacking moves. Bishop d1. So white, since white bishop is bad, he has to place it outside the pawn chain. White could have won a pawn by knight a4, but after bishop d7, knight c5, b7, rook c5, rook b8, followed by king e7. So there is not much. Like even if like I can easily win this pawn, but here white is delaying it. White wants to make his position more active. After that, he can grab this pawn later on. So after bishop d1, the black played h5. Black hopes to get his bishop play from this h6, this h6 c1 diagonal, and attack this rook on c file. Bishop a4, attacking this rook on a8. Rook d8, king f2. So white's idea is very simple. If black played h6, c5 is hanging. His idea is to play pawn g3 and f4 and make his king more active. Pawn h4, pawn to b4. White is trying to open this c file so that his rook can penetrate on c7, and he can like easily win this bishop on c8. Now this bishop has no squares left. So by sacrificing a pawn, white is opening up lines. Bishop h6. Black is trying to look for some counter play on the king side, because there is no counter play in the king's on the queen side. He is giving up this pawn on c5. Anyway, this pawn would be captured now or later, so he is giving up this pawn to create some counter play on the king side. Bishop h6, rook cross c5. Again, better not to take with this pawn, because I want to play my rook on this open c file and also attack this bishop on c8. Rook c5, bishop f4. He is looking for some check on g3, but that is not. That is just a matter of check, and this king is already safe on e2. So rook c7, king f6, and bishop d7. Bishop d7. There is a fork. If it takes, knight takes, and rook b8 is like white will be an exchange up, and if it doesn't take, then he will be a material down. Let's see if he plays like king g5, then simply you can win this bishop on c8. So now let's look into the moves once again. So knight e3. Idea is, if black plays knight d7, knight c4, exchange, and I am putting my other knight on b6. Bishop f8, protecting this pawn on c5. Rook c1, trying to create an attack and opening this c file by playing b4. King f7, bishop d1. If bishop want to retreat from a4, h5, bishop a4, rook d8, king f2. Okay, so king f2 idea is, if black plays bishop h6 and place his bishop on e3. So basically, again, this is a move which is preventing your opponent. You are preventing opponent's counterplay. This move is like you have to consider this move king ef2. Why he played? So there are many principles behind it. One is that in the end game you should uh, make your king active as much as possible. You must use your king as a piece, not as a material which like will be defended by your piece. You should use it as a piece, and you should use it for attack. So by playing king f2, you are guarding this e3 square, where there are possibilities that bishop can go to h6 and give you a check on e3 and sit on this d4 square, guarding both the pawn on e5 and c5. So you have removed such possibilities for black. So this is known as like preventing opponent's counterplay. For that, you have to identify. You have to look for like dynamics. You have to look for possibilities. It can be silly. It can be anything. It can be a silly possibility. Even if like it is not possible for your opponent, you have to look for it and you have to prevent it. Yeah, after he king f2, he played h4 and b4, giving up this pawn to open the c file. Rook c7 check. No, he didn't capture now. Pawn b4. Uh, he played bishop h6, then rook c5, bishop f4, rook c7 check, king f6, and then bishop d7. Black resigned. So that's all about preventing counterplay. I will give you one position for homework which you can solve and send me the solution my WhatsApp. I am arranging the position here. You can take a screenshot of it. Sit on this position for like at least half an hour and try to look for all the counter plays, whatever counter play you can find. Even it can be a silly counter play, it can be a major counter play, that doesn't matter, but you have to think, you have to use your brain and think as much as you can and try to find out some counter play. It is black to move, and as a white you have to find counter play for black. Once you have identified the counter plays for black, you have to identify your ways how will you prevent it. Okay, so that is the main theme of this position. Yeah, so this is the position. Just take a screenshot. No, wait, 1 second. Bishop is on it. So material wise, both black and white are equal. So it is black to move. It is black to play. Just take a screenshot of it and sit for at least half an hour. Even if you exceed it, that doesn't matter. You can stretch like 1 hour also for this position. These are like some positions where there are no combination. There is no combination. There is no like white to play and win, black to play and win. These are the positions where you play accurately, you will get the initiative, you will get the advantage, and you can convert that advantage into a winning position. So to convert a position, you have to look for such some accurate plan and accurate moves. Thank you. That's all about today. Bye bye.